Hey guys, just a heads up. The book that this podcast is about revolves around a lot of sexual stuff, and the author seems to have absolutely no conscience whatsoever. So I bring this up once again because I wanted to warn you ahead of time what you're getting into. I promise that next week we will review a book that's good for everybody and doesn't contain any of these triggers. But for the time being, be forewarned, and I appreciate your understanding. Thanks. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible.com, where you can get a free trial and a free audiobook at audibletrial.com/I-don't-even-own-a-television. You should check it out. 2, 1, 2, 3.
There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all, 'cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Hello, welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. I am your host, J.W. Friedman, and with me today is rap legend Jesse Dangerously.
Hi, everybody, and hi, Jay. It's great to be here.
That is the voice of a rap legend, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about a book by the infamous Piers Anthony entitled A Spell For Chameleon, and whoo boy. So, Jesse, I believe this was your idea, was it not?
As loath as I am to take responsibility for it, I was amped. It's when you first announced that you wanted to do the show. You're like, I want to talk about bad books. I was like, oh, you know what's the worst book? You know what I'd like to talk about? And I read it about 12 years ago, and I was already a grown up, but I was like, this is the worst book possible. And I remembered knowing it was the worst book possible, but I wasn't even prepared myself for what I got us into.
Yeah, I think you're kind of unique in this regard too, because I know for me and a lot of the people I know that are familiar with these books, they got into them in junior high, 6th grade. I definitely know that this was really big for me when I was about 12 or 13. I read a couple of his books at the same time. I was really into Roger Zelazny and all these other fantasy novelists.
Well, I was a late bloomer.
Yeah. What stuck with me at the time, though, was that they were filled with hyper-literal wordplay and puns, and that's kind of what had defined it in my mind. But coming back to it, it's a lot more grim and sinister than that. So I think we need to basically, before we get into this, we need to summarize what the plot of the book actually is. And so we're going to do a segment called Plot in 60 Seconds. Let's begin. Okay, so are you ready to summarize this book in 60 seconds?
Let's find out.
Okay, ready. 3, 2, 1, go!
Okay, there's a magical land called Xanth, which is a metaphor for Florida, and it's apart from the mundane world, cleverly called Mundania, where people don't have spells. And there's a young gentleman named Bink, which is a beautiful name and great choice there, because it lends an air of gravity to every moment of the book. And he doesn't know what his spell is, and if you don't have a magical talent or you can't demonstrate your magical talent, you get exiled from the land of Xanth and forced to live in Mundania. So he goes on a quest to find out what his magical talent is, and he is balked at every turn, and that's a important word in this book. He is balked passively.
Yes.
And he has a lot of trouble finding out what his talent is. He gets exiled. Along the way, he encounters people and creatures of great magical talent. He also encounters women, all of whom are in some sense despicable.
That's very true.
And it's very important narratively.
We are out of time. But
well, then he comes back.
Yeah. So basically, that is pretty much the main part of it. I think at the end of it, he finds out that he actually does have a magical power, but it's just that other magic doesn't affect him, which is a huge fucking cop-out. So.
It's also directly contradicted. His important backstory. I don't know if jumping into this is too fast, but yeah, the big reveal is your magic talent is that other magic cannot physically harm you. And they weasel around it a whole bunch. There's so much explaining in this book. This book constantly explains every thought that the author is having. It actually cuts itself off with double dashes all the time to go, but no, and wait, ugh. And And so all these different characters explain in the last few pages after we know what his talent is, oh yeah, no, other magic can't harm you. He's like, well, I've been harmed lots of times. Yeah, no, it can harm you. Just you can't be physically harmed. Okay, but there was this major flashback early on in the book where I inhaled a cloud of poisonous magical gas and it knocked me out. Yeah, but that was good. ultimately...
That's what led you to be exiled, and then if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have had this magical adventure and saved your world, so that was good.
I want to say about like the writing style of this book that I think it was written entirely in the language of Boolean. Every part of it is if, then, however, therefore, and it's all like mumbling it to itself, and it's not an omniscient narrative. It's all pretty much from the point of view of the protagonist. So he's just puzzling things through constantly, and he's got the worst ADHD, and I'm an expert, as I also have the worst ADHD and no magical talent. And he's like, and so everything he observes, he has to have 15 thoughts about it, related to something else that happened, like, clumsily. And then, like, some other creature that's trying to kill him will stop and have, like, a little chat with him about it, too. It's like...
Yeah, I noticed that, too. Like, everybody that wants to do him harm wants to stop and explain why first.
And it's not even in, like, a James Bond cliche way. It's just, like, they're just having a gab, you know?
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I guess I like you enough to talk to you for 10 minutes about how you're special. But,
well, and it's not even... And, like, when they're in dire straits, like, when these... like really powerful mystical creatures are actively like diving at them and like shooting flames their way or something, there'll be like a page and a half about like, well, the reason this beast actually might be able to harm us is and
yeah, and it'll go on for 3-4 pages, and then they'll cut back to the action, and you're supposed to still feel invested in it. There
was one I took notes, and I'm not when he there's a sort of an arch villain, but
he's a
complicated
evil wizard, quote unquote.
He's evil, and he's like, much in the way I'm Rap Legend. They're like, oh, evil wizard Trent, evil magician Trent.
His name is Trent too. I've got to say that the fact that they named him Trent just makes me think that like Piers Anthony had like a childhood bully named Trent or something in his life, because it's like, I'll show you, Trent.
Trent bullied Piers, but he wouldn't say boo to Bink.
Yeah, exactly. Bink. He knew, as you mentioned earlier too. Bink definitely lends gravitas to all the proceedings here.
Oh, there's a moment, I'm getting off. I can't help but be besieged constantly by thoughts about this, but like there's a moment when like the evil sorceress Iris is like, I've surrounded my palace with irises, and he's like, and the narrator thinks in Bink's voice, oh, Iris, like her name, but also the name of the flower.
Yeah.
Oh,
in case you didn't get it.
But then he goes, I wish there was a flower called Bink.
I didn't remember that at all.
It's amazing. But when Bink and like Trent are like, become embroiled in like more than just like instant mortal combat, but like, no, when they first encounter each other and like Trent is like, I need your information, and Bink is like, you're evil. 11 pages they talk for, with nothing else happening.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's agonizing. They just like, they get into like a lot of regional history and like the nature of magic, and there's this constant... Ooh, I can't help monologuing.
Oh no, don't worry. This is good.
I'm so upset about so many things in this book. Different types of upset, but like, there's a constant thread running through it of like Bink like just being curious, and he's a curious soul, and he's always thinking about the nature of magic. And they talk about how, well, there's this binary where magical creatures can't have a magic talent, they just have innate magic qualities, and then non-magical creatures such as humans can have magic talents. And he's like, well, is that always the case? And he talks at length of anything else that like speaks in the book. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like... And the sole piece of evidence that this might not be the case is right before he runs into the centaurs, there's a creature called a chip mouse that he sees maybe cast a spell to teleport a crumb close to itself. And he mentions the centaur, and the centaur's like, oh, that was a chipmunk, because a chipmunk is a mundane creature, and a chip mouse is a magic creature, so chip mouse can't cast spells. And he's like, I'm pretty sure it was a chip mouse. And then from this, and only this theory of like, there may be something more to the magic binary than we've considered.
That's some serious extrapolation at work right there.
And like, if they just never talked about it again, fine, but like it never goes away. It's like what drives him is he has to understand if that was really just a chipmunk.
Yeah, and it
teleported.
evolves from theory to inarguable truth very quickly without really any mention of how that happens. It just comes from him thinking maybe this is the case to the whole book being like, yes, this is definitely the case.
And he's like, he vocalizes it to a sexy horse lady.
Oh God, I forgot about that part.
in between, like admiring her in a really uncomfortable way, and she's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe.
So, okay, you mentioned Chipmouse, so I kind of want to talk about the god-awful puns that this book is laden with. And I do remember, as a child, that kind of being the hook that most of my friends were into. Yeah. But within the fourth page, within the first chapter, around the fourth or fifth page, there's a lengthy section that's basically talking about sowing wild oats, which in this case is referring to very literally sowing wild oats, and then they grow up to be plant ladies that you can have sex with. So right. It's really disturbing and weird.
Well, it's especially disturbing because in the world of this book, there's really no consensual sex, and like it's sort of described as like a reluctant, like unrefusable sex.
Yeah, and yeah, so, they exist to be under the thrall of the person who grew them, and it's gross. But lots of this book is, like you were saying. So,
do you want? I've got that passage. I've got the wild oats.
Oh
passage.
yeah, please.
Do you want to read it for them?
Let's regale the folks at home with some wild oats, some wild oatery.
I want to say this anecdote comes in the midst of a pitched battle. Bank is like trying to protect his friend who's kind of a tree from these other magicians, and like
Justin Tree, another awesome pun. So yeah, and
like so this is like while he's like running towards him to save him from, he knows he's getting chopped down. Bink passed a field of sea oats, hearing the pleasant swish and gurgle of their oceanic tides. When harvested, they made excellent foamy broth, except that it tended to be rather salty.
Oh, jeez.
The bowls could only be filled halfway, otherwise the broth's continuing sea waves slopped over. This is a thought he had about a nearby plant while his friend's getting chopped to pieces. He remembered the wild oats he'd planted as an adolescent. I'm familiar with this idea.
Yes.
Sea oats were restless, but their cousins, the wild oats, were hyperactive. They'd fought him savagely, their stems slashing across his wrists as he tried to harvest a ripe ear. He'd gotten it, but had been uncomfortably scratched and abraded before getting clear of the patch. He'd planted those few wild seeds in a secret plot behind his house, and watered them every day, the natural way. He'd guarded the bad-tempered shoots from all harm, his anticipation growing. What an adventure for a teenaged male. Until his mother, Bianca, had discovered the plot. Alas, she had recognized the species instantly. There had been a prompt family hassle. How could you? Bianca demanded, her face flaming. But Roland, his father, had labored to suppress his admiring smile. Sowing wild oats, he murmured. The lad's growing up. Now, Roland, you know that, dear. It isn't as if there's any real harm in it. No harm, she exclaimed indignantly. It's a perfectly natural urge for a young man. But her furious expression had halted Blink's father, who feared nothing in Xanth, but was normally a peaceable man. Roland sighed and turned to Bink. I gather you do know what you were doing, son. Blink felt excruciatingly defensive. Well, yes, the nymph of the oats... Bink! Bianca snapped warningly. He had never seen her so angry before. Roland held up his hands, making peace. Dear, why don't you let us work this out, man to man? The boy's got it right. And so Roland had betrayed his own bias. When his man-to-man chat was with Bink, it was with a boy. Without another word, Bianca had stalked out of the house. Women! It's not written on the page.
Yeah, but yeah, that's implied for sure.
Roland turned to Bink, shaking his head in a gesture that was only nominally negative. Roland was a powerful, handsome man, and he had a special way with gestures. What? Genuine wild.
Sorry. Man, you're great at gestures. Your rap hands are top notch.
Oh, fuck. All right.
I got a gesture for Piers Anthony. Ooh. All right.
Haven't you heard of Xanth book 891, The Court Gesture?
Oh, God.
fuck, yeah. Genuine wild oats, culled thrashing from the stem, sown by the full moon, watered with your own urine, he inquired, frankly, and Bink nodded, his face at half heat. So that when the plants mature and the oat nymph manifests, she'll be bound to you, the fertilizer figure? Sexy talk here.
Gross,
Bink
gross.
nodded grimly. Son, believe me, I comprehend the attraction, said Lieutenant Commander Data. I sowed wild oats myself when I was your age. Got me a nymph, too, with flowing green hair and a body like the great outdoors. But I'd forgotten about the special watering. Wink. So she escaped me. I never saw anything so lovely in my life. Except your mother, of course. Roland had sown wild oats? Bink had never imagined such a thing. He remained silent, afraid of what was coming. I made the mistake of confessing about the oats to Bianca, Roland continued. I fear she became somewhat sensitized on the subject, and you caught the brunt. These things happen. So his mother was jealous of something that had happened in his father's life before he married her? What a pitfall of concepts. What a pitfall of concepts Bink had stumbled onto, unwittingly. Now Roland's face became serious. And this is the part I highlighted in yellow, which was my highlighter for sexist.
Yes, and man, I bet this book is covered with yellow.
Because I watered it the natural way. I peed on it. That's familiar in this passage.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I was lagging behind there.
To a young man, inexperienced, the notion of a lovely, nude, captive nymph may be phenomenally tempting, he continued. All the physical attributes of a real woman, and none of the mental ones. But son, this is a juvenile dream, like finding a candy tree. The reality really would not be how you anticipated. One quickly becomes surfeited, tired of unlimited candy, and so it also is with a mindless female body. Setting up themes here.
Yeah, it's gross. I mean, there's a lot about this book that is skin crawly in the first degree. I can't count how much of this book I spent internally cringing. And that's something that I kind of forgot about when I was thinking about this from my childhood, is that I remembered it as being filled with puns. Like there's nickelpedes, which are like centipedes but 5 times larger, and
quantifiably
ant lions that are crosses between ants and lions and stuff like that. But I really, I mean, I guess I was too young probably to actually register it at the time, but this book is awful when it comes to the way it treats women. They all exist as either harpies or tools of man, and it's really awful.
Like there are literal harpies, and then there are, women who are directly compared to harpies, and it's strange. I read a lot. I was trying to look up some things that other people had said about the book, and I found a few people who had revisited it as adults, and a lot of them were like, I really just remembered the puns, and a lot of my peers were like, when did this series get so horrible about women? It started off being so lighthearted, and then they went back and found like it just starts in the most blatant, open, like author's message.
Yeah,
like women have a use, but it's not as people. And there's a weird, like in it, we haven't even addressed like the central metaphor of the story.
I think we need to get into that actually. So spoilers.
Sure.
This entire book revolves around Bink's relationship towards, once he meets her, with a woman named Chameleon, whose magic power is that she's incredibly smart and incredibly ugly for half of the month, and then incredibly beautiful and incredibly stupid for the other half. And it's described in the book as being the female cycle, which, incidentally, this entire book is based around a metaphor of the menstrual cycle, which is presented in the most awful and gross and like masculine-centric way possible.
Yeah, it introduces each phase. It's sort of it polarizes and it distinctly characterizes each phase of Chameleon's transformation. When she's the first way she's encountered is as stupid and beautiful. And that character is named Win. And then she's encountered as of average intelligence and average looks, whatever those mean. And that figure's name is D. And then when she's encountered as just like... They will not let you forget at any moment she's so horrifically ugly that every other character is close to barfing at every minute. But just like super smart. And you know what? Pretty nice too. That characterization is named Fanchon. And they're encountered as 3 distinct female characters before we find out that they're all one female character. And every female character encountered in the book is immediately assessed for fuckability.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And,
Like-
and not in any sort of subtle terms either. I mean, it's straight up like, she had big old boobs and stuff like that. It's really uncomfortable.
It's super uncomfortable, and it's so relentless. Like, and it's not even just when they're introduced. Like the way the narration is very conversational, and it's like just in the tone of either somebody casually telling you a story of their day or like mulling something over in their head, and it just relentlessly every time they're referred back to something about their intelligence and how fuckable they are and their, I guess, personality to some in some combination of those things.
Their quote unquote personality, which like the women in this book are drawn paper thin, and they're all either mothers or sexy seductresses and stuff.
And when they're mothers, it's like she was plain. He couldn't imagine being attracted to her sexually the way this other person said he was. Then he saw a glimmer of maybe how he could have standed to bone her.
Yeah, and that made her worthwhile to pick. So.
And
there's a sexy horse lady, though. Oh, yeah.
There's a few sexy animals, like anything that's got boobs. Like there's mermaids, and he's like, it's just like, wow, if they just only had legs.
Yeah, you get the impression at first, I was like, oh yeah, he's writing this teenage character, he's sex obsessed, and then gradually you realize, no, this is just the voice of the author.
It is the voice of the author, and Bink's age is described as being 24.
Oh, shit! Okay, wow, that's a big point that I didn't even catch. I was reading this book, I must have just skimmed over that, and I assumed he was supposed to be about 14 or 15 years old.
Yeah, well, certainly, I don't know what, like how Piers Anthony's 80 now, so he wasn't a teenager when he wrote it either in 1977.
Yeah, wow.
Just super immature, and there's like, oh, it's all such a blur. It's so creepy. Like there's an enchantress who has power over illusion, and she's like trying to allure him by changing her shape, and so like minutes after he was like inappropriately groping the horse lady against her protests, our hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely our hero, who's a great guy throughout this book and does things like this several times.
Like the essence of the book is constantly commenting on his strong moral fiber and like which is mostly rooted in patriotism, but also just he's a good man. He's a nice guy. There's so many opportunities for him to commit sexual assault that he barely even takes any.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he could have gotten way worse, so that means he's nice.
And so this enchantress is like, I can become anything you want with my powers of illusion. And she's like, I could look like I was 18. I could look like I could have these different proportions. And then like she goes like,
do you like Beyonce? All right, sorry.
But then she says 14, and it sticks on that for a while. It's like she transforms into a 14-year-old girl, and she's like, do you like this? And our hero is like, he had to admit, it's like he's pretty interested, and like he'd never spoken it aloud. And it's this weird, like, it comes back up again too. And
and it's like almost like Piers Anthony thought this was a normal thing, and like that his readers would be nodding along in agreement instead of being horrified.
And I guess what I didn't know about Piers Anthony after like scuttling away from his oeuvre the fastest I could after being burned by this attempt, is it's a recurring thing in his books, and it gets so much worse. And there's the talk page on his Wikipedia, which I don't really recommend reading if you have, triggers around anything. Yeah, is a lot of people arguing like we need to restore the pedophilia section to this article because he addresses it so approvingly so often in his books, and like he addresses sexual assault so callously, like he's glib and irresponsible, even if sometimes you could be like, oh well, that's a bad person, or like that was supposed to be a mistake they made. Like it's
glib is a good word, yeah, definitely for this.
Especially possibly the most notorious scene in this book for thinking adults.
And let's hold that thought here, because I want to get into this in a little bit more detail in the second segment, and I think we can kind of delve into a lot of the problems in this book just kind of by mentioning this one scene. So if you guys at home want to stick around, we will be back shortly.
is unrest in the forest, there is trouble with the trees. For the maples want more sunlight and the oaks ignore their pleas.
All right, welcome back to I Don't Even Own a Television. I am J.W. Friedman. With me today, Jesse Dangerously.
Good morning.
Good morning or evening or whatever time it might be in your particular slice of mundania. And we are talking about Xanth, a Spell for Chameleon. And as mentioned at the top of this program, this is going to deal with some sensitive topics, and I have a feeling we're diving right into the most sensitive of them. So we will attempt to keep this respectful, but I feel like this has to be mentioned because it is absolutely, hands down, the most awful thing in this book. So if you want to go ahead and kind of gear this up, I guess we're going to have to take this on. So
Yeah, this is what really burned itself into my brain when I read the book. And yeah, it's like there's a lot about the book that is clumsy and like poorly written, and like there's really funny things, and then there's like, even as I wave my hands and go like, and this is so sexist, like there's
yeah, like you could chuckle at that and just be like, oh, this is so ignorant and dumb, but it's still like, ha ha ha, look at this silly person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's this particular part we're getting into here that there's just no excuse for whatsoever.
Right. And look, I don't like to use the R word wantonly when I'm talking about
No, I agree completely.
But like the section of the word rape is frequently used in this book, and it's used glibly, and it's used just as an aside, and there's a scene in the book that you can only call, because it's constantly called this in the rest of the book, the rape trial. And the idea of it is that our hero gets unwittingly pulled in to be sort of a de facto jury in a strange concept of a trial where 3 people pretend to be the accuser and 3 people pretend to be the accused, and I guess the arbitrating magistrate doesn't know who's who. It's not clear what purpose it
it's
serves.
Very convoluted and confusing, for sure.
But like the, it's told to the people assembled that one of the 3 women there has says that she was sexually assaulted by one of the 3 men there, and no one's allowed to speak except for the bailiff or the magistrate or whoever, who like reads out what the accusation is and then reads out what the response is, and everybody's it's just this, it's like a strange like, wow, what if, but it doesn't have, there's not a theory behind it that I can discern, and it just gives us an opportunity to have our protagonist think like, wow, it would really wreck your life to get accused of this, and
exactly,
and objectify the women who one of them is the person who is the survivor, and like in fact the words that are put in the character's mouth are the most horrifying, to the point where like he's just rhapsodically enchanted by the beauty of one of them.
Yes.
And
yes. It's so offensive and awful and horrible in every way.
The phrase that it says is, Bink felt sorry for her. How could she avoid being seductive? She was a creature constructed for no other visible purpose than it's cut off mid-word, than love.
Yeah, that is the part. I have a note under that says holy period shit period, because that made my eyes bug out. It made every fiber of my being like quake in disgust.
Yeah, it hurts. Like there's not getting it, and it's just it just feels like such an attack on.
Yeah, and there's nothing, I mean, like you were saying, a lot of the other stuff in this is silly enough you can kind of laugh at it in the way that like old movies kind of do casual misogyny, and it's like, oh yeah, no, that was funny. People were so ignorant. But this is just beyond the pale. There's really no excuse for it, and there's not even really anything funny you can say about it because it's just so fucked up, like from top to bottom.
Yeah.
There's a passage in there also where he's talking about. This is the bailiff explaining the reasoning behind the trial, and he says, "Then I presume she would have fled him at the outset had she disliked him, and that he would have not forced her if she trusted him. In a small community like this, people get to know each other very well, and there are few actual surprises." Like, that is so fucked up. Like, there's not even words to describe how fucked up that is.
It's maybe the most harmful message you can give on that topic and almost any other topic.
Yeah, and the fact that, I mean, I'm not sure if this was actually marketed as a young adult book, but almost everybody I know who read these books started reading them at a young age. And, like, just to think that that kind of toxic thought process is worming its way into the minds of kids is, like, scary as shit.
Well, here's something about that I only found out today, is that the publisher wanted a young adult novel. No, the publisher wanted an adult novel. Piers Anthony turned in something that was on a very low reading level with this content in it, and the publisher was like, we're gonna have to do something to like make this more adult. So Piers Anthony's idea was to sophisticate the language, and that's kind of why it seems like it was gone over with the thesaurus. Is that it?
It definitely does.
Like an outlook becomes a promontory, and all these strange things, like just these obscure wordings happen, and that was like their thin attempt at it doesn't, like, lots of kids have big vocabularies, but then the extra weird thing is that years and years later, after the book was sort of canonical amongst fantasy readers, Piers Anthony was delighted that a young reader had undertaken to strip down the language to make it easier for people at a lower reading level to read, and so it was republished in a simplified edition explicitly for kids.
All right, yeah, okay, that is incredibly fucked.
And the content's not changed.
Yeah, even beyond that, though, I feel like Piers Anthony must just have no respect for the people who reads his books, because any child that's reading a fantasy book is probably pretty bookish to begin with, I want to say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, all of that aside, it's gross, and I don't really think we need to talk about it too much more, because I don't want to be hammering on something that's potentially upsetting to a lot of people. But yeah. I think it was important that we mention this, because it goes from being funny bad to horrifying bad, and I think it's worth anyone that listened to the rest of this podcast and was like, "Ha, this is funny, I want to read it." They should know that this is coming, because it is jaw-droppingly astonishing.
Definitely take that under advisement if you're thinking about it. Like steel yourself, because it's out of nowhere. There's no clue that it's going to treat the reader that way. And one thing that makes this, apart from its importance to like understanding what's upsetting about the book, is it sets the tone for. There are frequent jokes about a lack of consent and like coercion. Like immediately after the bailiff says, the one you almost raped, like winkingly, as though because he knows that he wasn't the accused. Not that I blame you. Like it's part of how he describes beauty in the book is.
Yeah, like, oh, this is an object of desire, whether she's interested or not, and grody.
And there's an argument that, like, the one sex scene that happens in the book takes place, like, he's sort of weighing, the protagonist is weighing whether Chameleon is too stupid at that stage, stupid being the word he constantly uses to describe her, to comprehend.
Yes.
And goes for it.
It should be said, too, that this is supposedly the state she's the most desirable, in which case she is a Playboy model with the mind of a child. And that is really messed up, too.
Yeah, as I said, like, he keeps returning, like, when he's around, when Bink is around the dumb version of Chameleon, every sentence he says about her is, pity she's so stupid, she so, like, describes part of her body. If Piers Anthony had access to an alternative pronoun set that connoted fuckability and idiocy, he would have worn it out in this book. And like
definitely.
And when he's with the smart, ugly version, every sentence is about how repulsive she is, and these weird asides about how like he can't understand why she covers herself when she goes to the washroom because nobody would want to look anyway.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah, there's like a scene where they're showering together and she's trying to be demure, and he's like, I don't even understand why. I wouldn't want to look at her ugly ass. It's so anyway. But then
like with the same character, moments later when she wants to put on clothes, he's like, well, I understand why she would want to put on clothes if she was all hot and we wanted to look at it. Like, or no, it's the other way around. It switches. Whatever the opposite is. Like,
I think the common thread between it is just relentless objectification.
Objectification and like spiteful. Like,
Yeah,
why does he,
that's
it's
a
not
good
even
point.
like, it's not even sympathetic, like, because the idea is like they wind up together, spoiler, like ultimately, like, she's determined, well, this is the man for me.
Spoiler, the one female character in the book with more than 3 speaking lines ends up as our protagonist's main squeeze.
And she's like,
surprised.
She's weirdly like not involved in the courtship, like she's pretty much in her less coherent phase during the whole time that he decides, like, yes, you know what, I'm gonna take the plunge here. And just at the end, you know, she's in like medium mode when she says, yes, I'll marry you. But like he never does anything nice. Like he rescues her from dying.
No, not at all.
Like
he saves her life once, I believe, but
Yeah.
even that's kind of questionable because she had a pretty big hand in that herself.
that's true. She actually was saving his life at the same time. So
Yeah. Oh, man. Anyway, I think we should probably move on to something else about this book before we both completely wear out our outrage meters.
Yeah.
But, you know, on a similar obnoxious topic, but probably far less sensitive unless you grew up in a British colony. This book has a very cavalier attitude towards, as you mentioned earlier, patriotism, colonialization, and that kind of the overworking theme of this book, beyond the weird section gender issues, is that Xanth itself has a protective bubble around it to protect itself from mundania, because over the course of history, they've been invaded, and basically kind of their society has, you know, experienced what is essentially referred to as a watering down of the genetic stock by these humans that come in and invade and take wives against their will and things like that. So you're led to believe at the beginning of this book that's bad, which, yes, that's really bad. But then about halfway through the book, they're like, oh, wait, everything you know is wrong. And actually, it's a really good thing that these mundane people are coming in and, you know, pillaging the fucking town and destroying a way of life and stuff like that, because they're the ones that create semi-magical humans who have a special power as opposed to the magical animal creatures. I may be getting confused here. Either way, like, quote-unquote evil Trent, who in the narrative of the book turns out to be awesome as hell Trent, in Piers Anthony's eyes, he's, you know, kind of the leading force between wanting to start a new invasion of Mundania, or of Xanth, by the mundanes. And so you're asked to sympathize with a guy who essentially wants to go into a foreign land by force and convert people to his way of life.
Yeah, and there's it becomes like in that moment, like the way he describes what he sees as being like the reasons that this would be beneficial, you sort of realize that the wildness of magic and the unpredictability is being posited as a primitivism, and like it's a civilizing force an influence that he wants to introduce. And like I guess they just sort of sidestep some of the more obvious thorns of the of the metaphor by being like, oh no, not guns and bombs, obviously, no, we're not going to have that. This isn't the bad kind of colonial invasion, but it weirdly has these like just blatant racial even terms used, like
Yes.
he goes from like, well, you know, the manticores are this, and you know, people with spells are kind of like that, and then it uses the word miscegenation to describe.
Yes, I was going to mention that, but I forgot how to pronounce it.
I'm doing my best with my lisp, but I think that's miscegenation, and like it's just, oh, we'll just like blatantly dip into like the most racist rhetoric to like seal up the cracks in this theory.
Yeah, at any point he's about 2 steps away from measuring heads. So
Yeah.
One thing that I found really interesting about it too, and I'm not sure for our listeners at home, Jesse is Canadian, and I know you guys have a big First Nations presence there as well. In America, Native Americans in particular are very kind of romanticized as being these mystical kind of people who are in touch with the land and magical and stuff. So there's definitely a lot of kind of twangs of early American colonialism in here as well, and it didn't sit with me very well. And the fact that they're like, oh, you know, we need to go in there and turn them away from their tribal ways and stuff. So.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like shoehorned in. Like it doesn't even become like it's the, I guess it's the outcome of the major quest within a quest or quest around a quest. But like the rhetoric supporting it is one speech, and like it just sort of like convinces the hero. He's like, no, I mustn't be persuaded by this beautiful reasoning. Oh, it sounds, but he's evil, and everybody always told me he's evil, and I mean, but he does run the trains on time, and
I think the point ultimately here too is that this whole story could have been told without that subtext. So it seems like Piers here has a specific axe to grind. Because when that popped up, I was like, why are you even talking about this?
Honestly, it could have been like separately handled with a Morpheus meme that goes like, what if I told you that colonialism isn't bad? It's actually very good and radical.
Exactly. But, I mean, this book definitely has a smugness about it where it's kind of like, oh, you thought that it was this, but it's actually this. And like, that is kind of a prime example of it. There's a streak of what I could probably only describe as contrarianism through the whole thing, where it almost seems like he's like tapping you on the head and being like, listen, I just said that, Bet you can't believe I said that.
Yeah. Well, and it's so rooted in like, so much like gender roles. It must be like a reflex to like women's lib and
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think I was thinking about the time this was written in, and that was around the same time that books like Real Men Don't Eat Quiche and stuff were tearing up the charts. So I could definitely see that there was a particular type of asshole in the world back then that was really, really threatened by the idea of women having their own voice and stuff. And I think a lot of this book kind of was like a snarky response to that at the time, and maybe that didn't carry through the years, and that's why it didn't really click with me when I was a kid reading it, is that it just seemed like a fantasy world, and I couldn't really see all those parallels between a very real reality in a lot of ways and what he's describing in his book.
Yeah, to take it a little bit like a broader scope, just like literary criticism, let's say, would it be fair to posit that in all the world of fiction, literary fiction, genre fiction, fantasy is like the worst fucking thing ever? Like, nothing in the universe is worse than the best fantasy book ever written.
Even the best fantasy book you have to apologize for parts of.
I grew up on this stuff. I read 1,000-page, 2,000-page fantasy books. I was covered in orcs, dwarves, elves, dragons. I read Wheel of Time. I read Tolkien, and eventually, I read Waterdeep. What's that? Dungeons and Dragons books, endlessly, and it
Drizzt.
What's that, R.A. Salvatore? Yeah, the Dark Elf.
Right now, it just came out. There's an audiobook of Dungeons & Dragons read by Ice-T, The Legend of Drizzt.
Oh.
And it was done completely seriously, and evidently he did a great job, but he sounds completely fed up with it by about halfway through. So.
Why couldn't Drake have read it? Why couldn't it be
that would have been so much better.
Oh, man.
Filled with feelings.
I was hoping at first that it was an audiobook of the Dungeons & Dragons rule book.
Oh, that would be even better.
I think that Ice-T could really bring much needed life to those.
Yeah, definitely
to those statistics. But yeah, I mean, okay, like just fantasy. It's not like you can't write a good book with dragons in it, but so much is just allowed to. So much effluvium issues forth from like it's got magic and that's just enough. It's for kids. It's for nerds. And it's not just, it doesn't just like let them get away with like appalling moral things. It's just like it's written in crayon. So many words don't mean. I was able to confirm a suspicion. I read the book initially in paperback, crumbling paperback, and this was like I knew that the word bulk was overused.
Yes,
and I knew that it was inappropriately used. And I love non-standard usages of words, but you just can't. And the word is used 23 times in the book.
Oh God! 3
of those, and it's already kind of a weird word. But like only 3 of those are, I balked at that.
Yeah, the rest is a lot about him being balked, which I didn't think was possible.
And and it's just so persistent. And like there was an editor. The book had an editor. Where were they for that? I had 4 different colors of highlighter going in Kindle on my pirated, mind you.
As
Not
long
that
as
I
you didn't
wouldn't-
steal it from Audible, we're cool.
I was just gonna say you might want to go to Audible for this one. I didn't know about all that fancy stuff. There's a lot of secrets kept from us in Canada. I mean, this Kindle's made of wood, but I had 4 colors. I had 4 colors of highlighter to try and like keep track of different things that were recurring. The red highlighter helped me keep track of uses of the word bulk. The yellow highlighter helped me keep track of instances of sexism and misogyny in the book. And I wound up using a little bit for racism, too, because I didn't have enough for, like, separate colors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Piers has tons of isms, so you run out
all
pretty
experiences
fast.
are the same. So, orange was for just egregiously bad writing, and I use that for different types of egregiously bad writing. Like if it was just like a sentence that made no sense, or just like, why would you explain that in the middle of this action scene?
The digressions are heavy.
And then blue, the color blue I used for only the following 4 sentences, the first 3 of which are within 8 pages of each other, and the last one is towards the end of the book. Night transformed Xanth is blue number 1. Night brought out a special magic. Then night was the time of sinister magic. And then towards the end of the book, night. That was the worst time for hostile magic. Now, each of those is the beginning of a paragraph describing that in Xanth, when it's dark out, it's kind of spookier, the magic that happens. It's like was this book dictated at a bar? Yeah. Like, you could just establish that.
I think we should mention, too, that Night Brings Out a Special Kind of Magic is definitely my favorite Bob Seger song. So, yeah.
There's so many double hyphens to like in speech and in narration, just suddenly having a new idea. Oh, a squirrel, and just running off towards it.
Here's one of my favorite pieces of Brad writing, since we were talking about that. Of course, now it takes a long time to slow down, to pull up my thing, so I'm going to have to edit this out.
You can edit this out. Fuck balls.
Let's see.
Dick snout.
Here we go. Dick snout. Were new part human monsters being formed even now by magically enabled interbreeding? That's another thing about this book, and actually, this kind of came up.
That's a good industrial album, though. That's a good industrial album.
This came up in Covert Conception, which, I would expect a Harlequin romance novel to have a much lower standard of writing, but this book is constantly asking the reader questions that have already been answered. Like, it'll be like, so-and-so said this. How do you think so-and-so will react when this happened? It's like reading prompts,
But, and then it answers itself, and then it second guesses that. And there's always a therefore, however.
He'll flop back and forth about 6 times in the course of like 2 pages, and I feel like maybe some of that was padding out word count, and other of it, I kind of feel like I'm having a direct line into a very disordered mind. So.
Yeah, and God bless him, we've all got our things. I find it difficult to write in a straight line, but you just go over it a few times, It's the process of changing your collection of themed pub stories into a novel that you hold in your hand at one time and read in order. Like, oh god.
It's a very interesting style of writing. It's got some really, really horrible ideas in it, and ultimately I found it pretty unfulfilling in general. But I think it's time to go to a break, and we're going to come back and do some games, which seems wholly inappropriate considering what we've been talking about. But
it'll be healing.
Yeah, that's it. Time for healing. A time for uplifting nonsense. So please stick around, and we will be right back. Today's episode of I Don't Even Own a Television is brought to you by Audible, home to over 30,000 audiobooks, which is so many you could probably die of old age while listening to them. Do they have Harlequin intrigue novels? I'm not sure, but they have a lot of other great stuff, like Galveston by Nick Pizzolatto, narrated by Robert Kramer. I'm listening to it now. It's incredible. You should check it out. So, if you'd like to check that out, or one of the many other titles you can also scope, why not go to audibletrial.com/I Don't Even Own a Television and sign up now for a 30-day free trial and a free audiobook download credit. You'll be helping me out, and you will get all sorts of great entertainment you don't even need to use your eyeballs to absorb. Thanks. Welcome back to I Don't Even Own a Television. My name is Jay Williams Friedman, and with me today is rap legend Jesse Dangerously.
It's such a relief to see you again.
Yeah, definitely. I'm feeling better already. We've been getting pretty in depth here about the Heart of Darkness that is Spell of Chameleon by Piers Anthony. Yeah. And I think it's probably time to lighten things up a little bit. So why don't we go ahead and do some dramatic readings? Okay. All right, theme song.
That was lightning.
Yeah, I'm leaving that in.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
In dramatic readings, we pick a segment of the book each, and we read them in a hyper serious style. In the case of this book, it was kind of hard to find things that are lighthearted once you're aware of the horrible darkness that lurks underneath the surface, but I think we've both done a pretty good job. So, Jesse, if you'd like to start here, why don't you go ahead and hit us with your favorite passage?
The battle was upon him. Bink charged the tree, stone in one hand, pole in the other. He hoped to knock out the magician before Trent could throw his spell, but Trent wasn't there. Had he jumped to a conclusion? Chameleon could have scared out a hiding doe. "Now!" the evil magician cried from above. He was up in the tree. As Bink looked up, Trent gestured, not making a magical gesture, but bringing his hand down within 6 feet so as to cast the spell effectively. Bink jumped back. Too late! He felt the tingle of transformation. He rolled on the ground. In a moment, he got his hands and feet under him, and discovered he was still a man. The spell had failed. He must have made it out of range in time after all, so that only one arm was in range, not his head. He looked back at the tree and gasped. The evil magician was tangled in the prickles of a candy-striped rosebush. "What happened?" Bink asked, forgetting his own peril for the moment. "The branch of the tree got in the way," Trent said, shaking his head as if dazed. He must have had a hard fall. "The spell transformed it instead of you." Bink would have laughed at this freak accident, but now he remembered his own position. So, the magician had tried to turn him into a rosebush. He hefted his rock. "Sorry," he apologized, and hurled it at the handsome head. But it bounced off the tough shell of a purple tortoise. Trent had converted the rose to the armored animal and was hidden behind it. Bink acted without thinking. He aimed the pole like a lance, ran halfway around the tortoise, and thrust it at the magician. But the man dodged, and again Bink felt the tingle of enchantment. His momentum carried him beyond his enemy. He was still a man. He retreated to the invisible bush, marveling at his escape. The spell had bounced, converting the tortoise to a were-hornet. The insect buzzed up angrily, but decided on escape rather than attack. Now Trent was hot on Bink's tail. The bush became a woman-headed serpent that slithered away with it. He thought about fucking it.
That's the subtext.
The bush became a woman-headed serpent that slithered away with an exclamation of annoyance, and Bink was exposed again. He tried to run, but was caught a third time by the magic. Beside him, a yellow toad appeared. "What is this?" Trent demanded incredulously. "I struck a passing gnat instead of you. 3 times my spell has missed you. My aim can't be that bad." Bink scrambled for his staff. Trent oriented on him again, and Bink knew he could neither get out of range nor bring his weapon to bear in time. He was finished, despite all his strategy. But the winged deer charged from the side, threatening to bowl over the magician. Trent heard her coming and spun to focus on her. As she reached him, she became a lovely iridescent butterfly, then a very pretty wyvern. "No problem there," Trent remarked. "She's good-looking in whatever form I put her, but my spells are registering perfectly." The small winged dragon turned on him, hissing, and suddenly she was the winged doe again. "Scat!" Trent told her, clapping his hands. Startled, the deer bounded away. She was not overly bright. Meanwhile, Bink had taken advantage of the distraction to retreat, but he'd gone toward his own carefully fashioned trap, and now he did not know precisely where the new sloops lay hidden. If he tried to cross that line, he would either trap himself or give away its presence to Trent, assuming the magician was not already aware of it. Trent strode toward him. Bink was cornered, victim of his own machinations. He stood unmoving, knowing the magician would turn on him the moment he tried to act. He cursed himself for not being more decisive, but he simply did not know what to do. He obviously was no duelist. He'd been outmaneuvered and outmagicked from the outset of this contest. He should have left the evil magician alone. Yet he still could not see how he could have stood by and yielded Xanth up without even token protest. This was that token. "This time, no error," Trent said, stepping boldly toward Bink. "I know I can transform you, for I have done it many times before without difficulty. I must have been over-hasty today." He stopped within range, while Bink stood still, not deigning to run again. Trent concentrated, and the magic smote Bink once more, powerfully. A flock of funnel birds manifested around Bink. Hooting derisively, they jetted away on their fixed wings. "The very microbes surrounding you!" Trent exclaimed. "My spell bounced right off you again! Now I know there's something strange." "Maybe you just don't want to kill me," Bink said. "I was not trying to kill you, only to transform you into something harmless so that never again could you oppose me. I never kill without reason," the magician pondered. "Something very strange here. I don't believe my talent is misfiring. Something is opposing it. There has to be some counterspell operating. You have led a rather charmed life, you know. I had thought it was mere coincidence, but now—" Trent considered, then snapped his fingers ringingly. "Your talent! Your magic talent, that's it! You cannot be harmed by magic!" "But I've been hurt many times," Bink protested. "Not by magic, I'll warrant. Your talent repels all magic threats." "But many spells have affected me. You transformed me." "Only to help you, or to warn you. You may have not trusted my motives, but your magic knew the truth. I never intended to harm you before, and so my spells were permitted. Now that we are dueling, and I'm trying to change your status for the worse, my spells bounce. In this respect, your magic is more powerful than mine, as certain prior signals have indicated indirectly." Bink was amazed. Then I have won. You cannot hurt me." "Not necessarily so, Bink. I don't know where that accent came from.
It's great.
I'm going for it. "Not necessarily so, Bink. My magic has brought yours to bay and forced its unveiling, and thereby rendering it vulnerable." The evil magician drew his gleaming sword. "I have other talents in magic. Defend yourself. Physically!"
So, in addition to being an incredible reading, I'd like to say that we have now unintentionally cast the movie version of this, starring Sean Connery as Evil Trent. So. God, yeah, I mean, that's great, and it really does encapsulate all of the things that are so awkward about this book, and the fact that that is apparently, or that's supposed to be happening during a duel to the death, and there's, page after page of conversation and exposition that happens in between the action.
And it's so collaborative. Like, let's get to the bottom of this.
Oh, man, okay, so I'm going to do mine here. This is, a little bit shorter, but I think also kind of sums up a particular aspect of the book here. So this is Bink's adventure when he's running through the woods trying to escape from a harpy that has quote-unquote full woman breasts and a coiled snake tail.
That's woman-breasts.
Yes. So he bent his head and heard a rustle too close. He jumped up, drew his knife, moved a few paces, and through the trees sighted an incredible thing. Two creatures were locked in combat, a griffin and a unicorn. One was male, the other female, and they were not fighting, Bink retreated, profoundly embarrassed. They were two different species. How could they? Disgusted, he returned to the spring. Now he noted the recent tracks of the creatures. Both unicorn and griffin had come to drink here, probably within the hour. Maybe they had crossed the bridge as he had and seen the springs so conveniently located. So the water could hardly be poisoned. Suddenly he caught on. This was a love spring. Anyone who drank of this water would become Anyone who drank of this water would become compellingly enamored of the first creature he encountered thereafter, and he glanced over at the griffin and unicorn. They were still at it, insatiably. So my favorite part of that is that's 3 paragraphs in a row that end with the double dash. So I felt that was good because it's all, so the water could hardly be poisoned. Suddenly he caught on. I have never seen an author that interrupts himself more than Piers Anthony.
Oh, no, you know what would be better? Okay.
Yeah, it's not poison, so what if it's a love spray? Oh, shit.
It's 1977. It's a typewriter. He can't delete. He can't backspace.
Yeah, exactly. He's just got to kind of ride these flights of fancy wherever they take him, no matter what horrible place it ends up.
It is nice to be reminded that there is a truly loving sex scene in the book as well.
Yeah, definitely.
However curtailed however much you might have liked to hear more detail, Bink couldn't stomach it. Thanks a lot, unreliable narrator.
Well, they're two different species. How could they?
Could they? I thought it's not
And this is literally about 10 pages before Bink starts lusting after a centaur woman and trying to grab her boobs. So.
It's not even like, how does that work? It's like he's scandalized by these animals.
Completely scandalized. Like, dude, you never seen a dog trying to hump a cat? What the hell? All right, sorry.
Yeah. He's got a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, there is. There's a whole world of experiences out there just waiting. So
that's why there's 815 Xanth books.
Yes, exactly. God, there are a lot of these books too. I looked it up after we were, talked about doing this, and after I had finished this book, because I remember there being about, quite a few of them, like 10 or 11, but it numbers like into the 20s or 30s, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's endless puns.
Yeah, and the puns, every title after A Spell for Chameleon is like a horrible, horrible groaner of a pun. And I think it kind of sets you up for a lot of dad jokes, but you don't get dad jokes, you just get like really gross shit instead. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, so we've done some dramatic readings here. I think it's time to move on to another segment called What Is Your Fave?
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
So in What Is Your Fave, questions will be posed, favorites will be told. What is your fave completely useless magical power?
Yeah, they keep talking about spot on the wall, the magical power to create a different colored spot on the wall.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I mean that was like, it even makes reference within the book to somebody bringing it up as a cliche, and he's like, Trent seemed charming for bringing this up, but then he realized everybody knew that was a useless talent. So I've mentioned it 5 times in the book already.
Yeah, that's one of Bink's rivals is a spot on the waller, which is exactly what it sounds like. And, for me, I think it was the one who had the ability to create. Oh man, I'm probably screwing this up now, but he could create clouds of horrible magic that would incapacitate people, except not really. They just think they were incapacitated, and I like that a lot.
Is that the poison gas that got him?
Yeah, the poison gas doesn't actually hurt anybody, is what they were saying. It just convinces you that you're hurt, which, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of the same thing.
Well, that might be like the edit that undermines my viewing it as an inconsistency with his power protecting him from magic. If it didn't really hurt him. I'm out to lunch. Piers Anthony is a genius.
Yeah, I mean, he had all his ducks in a row. I'm sure this was tightly outlined and plotted, storyboarded.
What if there was a magic gas that didn't not make you feel sick?
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of now that you've phrased it that way, this book is like kind of a walking double negative. That like the whole time you're expected to be like, this isn't true, but it is true because the other thing isn't true either, and it gets so confusing. And
he just told you both of the both prospects in the same 18-page expositionary speech anyway, so it's not like you were really attached to one of them being true. You're not invested. There's no show. It's all tell. Like, for a book that constantly describes the interior monologue of its protagonist, it still crams every piece of information into the mouths of every character.
Yeah, that's true. And that's like, I mean, kind of one of the advantages of writing a book from the protagonist's perspective is you should be able to kind of like explain that without having people say out loud to each other or, cutting into the middle of action scenes with lengthy passages of exposition.
As you know, this is your last day of law school and we're getting married later.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so one more thing.
I think I lost the quiz portion. I think I scored poorly on that.
It's okay. We'll give you a prize anyway.
Hope so.
The prize is nothing. All right. So
curse you, Stanley.
So moving on, gonna do one more segment here. We're kind of running through all of them because they're so much fun. This is called What Would They Do?
Sometimes the tensions so hard to define, and others the clear as day. So tell me, what would they do?
All right. In What Would They Do? I am going to provide the name of a character and a situation that isn't mentioned in the book. We're going to try to tease out what would happen in that case. So in this case, Jesse, what do you think Bink would do in the comment section of Jezebel?
It's important to note that Bink is a nice guy. He's not interested. he views himself as very thoughtful and interesting in research. I'll say I bet he plays devil's advocate in a lot of conversations, and like he's got a lot of things figured out, particularly the type of things that seem to be the wheelhouse at Jezebel.com, and he's gonna let you know about like what women are really like, basically, and he knows what they like, how they deserve to be treated. If there's a news story on like, well, first of all, if there's a photograph, he's gonna let you know, oh yeah, I'd do her. I don't think so. Anyway, I heard she's stupid, so I wouldn't even want to do her. You know what? I need an intellectual lady who doesn't even need to wear makeup.
Oh God, it's the Onion AV Club commentariat style of posting right there. But
yeah. So he'd be a
Megan Fox is hot, but she has weird thumbs.
I probably would still do her, but we couldn't talk about Hitler.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I think he'd be not all manning up a storm, for sure.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. I think we kind of agree. He's definitely a dude who has nice guy problems. Bank would probably talk about the friend zone pretty earnestly. There's a part in the book where he says, "Will I always be babied by women?"
While his face is being literally crushed into bare breasts every 4 pages.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you act like a 12-year-old.
His mom still makes his sandwiches. He's 24 years old. And he's like, my mom, they're delicious sandwiches, but it really doesn't make me feel like a grown-up. I'll still eat them, though.
Yeah, and he's resentful about it, too. Like, why does my mom make me sandwiches?
Mom! I was going to just get him a sandwich tree, which is a tree that looks like a witch made out of sand.
Oh, God. I'm actually surprised that didn't pop up, but I'm sure it does in one of the many following books.
It's a love interest.
All right. So I think we've kind of run our course here, talking about this fucking intellectual property. Can't even really call it a book because it became such an empire of awfulness. But so I guess in closing, Jesse, I wanted to ask you if you would recommend this book to anyone else, earnestly, ironically, both, or neither.
I would recommend it not at all. I mean, I think, there's a certain anthropological value to like really knowing what you're up against, and if you care about human beings, it might be of some value to really look at some of the awful things that some human beings say about how they feel about other human beings. But just listen. We just told you,
yeah, you don't need to dig into it any deeper than that.
Just read something that a woman wrote where she tells you somebody treated her that way and believe that, and you don't actually need to read the words of Piers Anthony.
Yeah, you don't need it in the trappings of like fantasy and bad puns and stuff to recognize that a lot of men are really awful about this shit. And Piers Anthony, I you did some research about his life. I don't know much about it, but just from reading this, I just got the impression that he is a bitter man.
He's a bit of a Dave Sim.
With a huge axe to grind.
Like he's a bit of a Dave Sim. He like writes these big letters to his public, and like they're long meandering letters, and he uses Linux. He's a
okay. Yeah. There's something kind of Dawkinsy about him, I feel like, but yeah. I'm gonna lean with you here. I would not recommend this to anybody. If it weren't for the god awful sexism and misogyny and the tacit approval of all sorts of horrible things, I would probably recommend it, ironically, because the story itself is just so goofy and horribly drawn, and the characters are so flat that it really does kind of function as an awesome masterpiece of bad writing, but then it's threaded with just evil shit that's impossible to ignore, and I think that really sucks the fun out of the bad stuff.
Totally. Lots of other bad writers aren't as bad of people.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of stuff out there that you can read that's funny, that doesn't have all these horrible, problematic issues with it, so...
On that note, I want to extend like a personal apology to you
for having
suggested this and put it into your life once again.
No, I mean, honestly, when you mentioned it, like I said, I was familiar with it as a kid, and I was like, oh yeah, there's those horrible fantasy books with the puns, and coming to this was eye-opening. I'm really surprised that I managed to read this as a teenager and not grow up to be completely fucked. So it seems like a lot of people did recover from it, though. And in a way, I mean, it was a different time. It's not an excuse for him writing it, but maybe an excuse for people not realizing how bad it was until later. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Yeah, not good.
They've got us now. They've got us to tell them now.
Not good. Don't read. skip, do not pass go, etc., etc. So
burn in bulk.
Yeah, burn in bulk. If you happen to know any local thought police or anything like that, this would be a good book to be first on the chopping block.
I'm actually slowly sawing my Kindle in half as we do this podcast, ritually purging myself of that.
It's worth mentioning too, just as an aside. I grew up in the southern U.S. In the mid '80s, I was in elementary school, and we actually had a list of books that were not allowed to be in the public library or to be taught in class or in the school library. I mean. And it included stuff like To Kill a Mockingbird and things like that because of quote-unquote racially sensitive passages. But this entire series was in our school library when I was in sixth grade. And that just disturbs me a lot.
Yeah, it's so insidious.
Yeah, it really is. It sneaks up on you. And I think that's what's really kind of the worst about this. But also, it's just horrible in every way and not fun to read.
You can read a better bad book.
Yeah, definitely. Like, read one of the Harlequin books. Those are, like, always the most fun bad books to read in my experience.
And there's infinity of them.
Doing this podcast. Yeah. And as you mentioned before, too, fantasy in general is just, while there are great fantasy books, it's also a dumping ground for really, really awful things. I feel like sci-fi has this tendency to become polemic at a high level. And fantasy has this kind of tendency to roll in the gutter when you get to the bad side of things, and neither of those are fun to read. So
I think sci-fi writers get worked up when they really, really hate an idea and they want to show you how this aspect of humanity, this high concept, will destroy us. Usually science itself. And then fantasy is like, if you have this earthy view, it's usually very gendered. It's just like, oh, we're a funny people, us, but
yeah. But wouldn't it be cool if we could magically create women that want to sleep with us? Anyway, though, it's probably time to go, so I would like to thank you, Jesse, for being here. Is there anything you would like to plug as far as things you're working on, how people can get in touch with you, etc., etc.?
Well, you can keep up with me as just an engaging personality at Twitter. My Twitter is RLJD for Rap Legend Jesse Dangerously. My Tumblr is rljd.tumblr.com for Rap Legend Jesse Dangerously. I'm also an incredible rapper, and you can listen to that and decide for yourself whether I'm shitting you about it at dangerously.bandcamp.com or just go to dangerously.ca. Google me up. I want to be your friend. And tell you what you're doing wrong with your life, either in rhyme form if you're not as good of a rapper as me, or just personally if you fuck up in any way.
I was gonna say, yeah, Jesse is one of the warmest individuals I know, and also one of the quickest people to tell you when you're fucking up. So
I'm trying to add a little delay on it. I'm trying to come down like a ton of bricks only with love from now on.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned this. It's good. It's good. Jesse is the conscience of many people, I feel like. So
I'm trying to come down like a ton of feathers.
Yeah, wow, that's really actually pretty accurate. So yeah, definitely keep up with Jesse. Listen to his music too, because I may or may not be on a couple songs. But that's not the only reason to listen to it.
Evermore also.
Yeah,
hopefully.
but I mean, if you like this podcast, you'd probably like me doing something completely unrelated to it. So why not check that out?
It's like anything you do with that voice of yours.
Yeah, and this is a voice that screams rap. So. All right, guys. Well, thanks again, Jesse. Thanks for being here.
I love you, Jay. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, bud. I love you, too. And everybody else, thank you for listening. I love you, too. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email idontevenownatelevision@gmail.com. You can go to the website, idontevenownatelevision.com, where there are links to Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, which I won't recite here because it's a horrible anagram that's very hard to pronounce. Acronym, I mean, even. I can't even pronounce the word that describes it. So thanks for sticking around, everybody, and we will see you next week. Until then, keep reading crap.